welcome to another edition of Rendezvous with me, your host, Jyoti Sindar. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the show, where have you been? Rendezvous highlights taboo subjects within the Asian society, and today we are discussing homosexuality within the Asian community. I am joined in the studio today by Dr Rusi Jaspal, a lecturer in psychology at University. But before we delve into our discussion, let's see what people on the streets of the UK think about homosexuality.
I think in this country everything is possible.
I think living in British society, homosexuality is completely normal. Within the current stance on it is there is a lot of viewpoints in terms of the way people see homosexuality and the way they view it. I perfectly feel that it's completely normal. It's part of British society, and you can't change your sexuality. Sexuality is just something you're born with. That's my personal view.
Homosexuality is a choice of people and it's a lifestyle of individuals, and there's no real opinion of do you have an opinion or not. It's just just one of those lifestyles that people live.
My views on homosexuality is just any average person. I have no disagrees with it. I think it's just normal. I think it's fair that everyone gets treated the same.
It's different, boy, girl, girl, and another people is coming in another city, another country here, maybe bring too much SIDA here in this country. It's possible to syphilis, HIV, everything. When you do some sex, with some girl, maybe next day you want to go in the hospital. And after then, you come back home, you stay after too much you think for that.
I have no particular views on homosexuality. If I'm honest, nothing against, nothing for, really.
Wow, some interesting views there as usual. Now, as mentioned before, I am joined by Dr Rusi Jaspal. Thank you, Rusi, for joining us today. Now, you're currently a lecturer at University, yes, but your work goes beyond that to topical social psychological concerns. Now, can you tell our viewers a bit more about yourself and the type of work that you're involved in?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a chartered psychologist, and I've been working at the university, at University since January, where I focus largely on the psychology of sexuality. I've been concerned more specifically with how people of ethnic and religious minority backgrounds deal with sexuality-related issues. So recently I have been looking at the experiences and the identities of British Asian gay men, and looking at this from a psychological perspective. So I'll talk a little bit about the more specifics of the work that I've done. I'll start off really by talking about religion, and I think the role of sexuality in religion. For a very long time, the role of sexuality within religion and the relationships between religion and sexuality were completely ignored, I think. It was a very sensitive issue which people were very wary of exploring. So I wanted to, in a way, address this taboo topic in my research, and to actually create a dialogue and a discussion about something I think is very important. So I conducted interviews with a very large group of British Asian gay men, mainly of Muslim background, to look at the ways in which they felt about their sexuality and their religion, and the sorts of conflicts that they faced in their everyday lives. What I've found quite consistently is that there is a great deal of conflict, that people find it very difficult to reconcile their religion and their sexuality. They find it very difficult to acknowledge their religion and sexuality at an individual level, but also to others.
And within your research, do you find, that within the Asian community there has been a rise in homosexuality in general, or do you think that people are now coming out of the closet, as it were? Terribly sorry if that's not a good term to use, but do you feel people are more confident to say and stand up and say, yes, I am gay, and I'm comfortable with this, and I'm not ashamed of saying this?
Well, I think, firstly, that sexuality is biologically determined, and I think that that homosexuality is not very common, but it remains fairly stable. So I wouldn't say that more people are becoming gay than in previous times, but I think people are feeling increasingly comfortable acknowledging their sexuality, their homosexuality. So we see more people acknowledging this publicly and to themselves. That's why it may seem as if more people are gay.
Yeah.
It's, I think, the same amount of people, but just more people are recognizing this. But among Asians, I would say there is still a lot of trepidation, a lot of hesitation about acknowledging their sexuality because of the culture, etc. Still things are improving, but slowly.
Yeah. Now, you've written an article on identity processes, threat and interpersonal relations. Now, can you tell us more about the types of people these accounts came from and a bit more detail surrounding the article?
Yes, absolutely. So that was one of several articles that I wrote about British Muslim gay men.
Okay.
And I was particularly interested in looking at the experiences and identities of people who are in the closet, who haven't acknowledged...
So it's okay to say that then?
Yes, yes. So who haven't acknowledged their sexualities on a social level. So through collaborations with various research assistants who are very much within the community, i.e. Muslim and gay, I was able to gain access to these individuals who are willing to talk about their experiences. And what I found in that article was that people's identities were threatened. And what I mean by that is that their feelings of self-esteem were threatened, their sense of continuity over time was being threatened, and they really felt that there was a sense of incompatibility between being gay and being Muslim. And it was quite striking to see the extent of that conflict and the effects on their psychological well-being. Some people felt suicidal and really didn't know where they were going with their lives at all. I think that article helped me to identify that there is a real problem which needs to be addressed, and it has started a dialogue now.
Do you think it was more of a cultural issue or a religious issue? I mean, why were they so afraid?
I think it's both. And I think in order to answer that question, we have to look at the specific subgroups within the South Asian community.
Yeah.
For Hindus and Sikhs in general, it tends to be more of a cultural issue because it's not culturally valued to be gay or lesbian or bisexual.
Yeah.
It's not. It's seen as being against the culture. For Muslims, it is against the culture, but there's often that religious dimension as well. So there is a perception that this is fundamentally against Islam.
Yeah.
So while Hinduism and Sikhism don't have a very clear stance on homosexuality, at least it's not talked about an awful lot in religious settings, there is a perception that Islam is fundamentally against homosexuality, which adds that extra level of conflict and making it very difficult. So it wasn't just a case of saying, I don't want to tell my parents. It was a case of thinking, is being gay compatible with being Muslim? So it was very much an individual phenomenon as well as a social one.
I think there was a news report about an individual who was court recorded mentioning about, I think it was a female actually, who was saying that, you know, if someone was gay within the Muslim community, they would be killed, etc. And essentially you would usually find individuals that are coming from sort of men, you know, that statement being made, and this was a female saying it. So do you feel that this is something that has stemmed from generations back from sort of the motherland of India, Pakistan, or do you feel that this is something that is an issue in the UK and it stems back from sort of, you know, you can connect anything to it, you could connect racism to it, you could connect, you know, just it being such a taboo thing?
I would say it is very much something that has been passed on along generations. It is, homophobia is of course not unique to South Asia whatsoever. We've had homophobia in this country for a very long time indeed. Only in 1967 was was homosexuality legalized for men. So, you know, there is a legacy of homophobia in this country. But I think it is very much about South Asian culture and also the religions that are associated with South Asian culture that continue to, let's say, forbid socially homosexuality, and I think also because there is a lot of hesitation within dominant society to address sensitive issues among ethnic and religious minorities, that we're not really seeing an awful lot of progress being made. You know, there's a lot of hesitation about being accused of being racist if one questions aspects of South Asian culture. And whilst I understand that to a certain degree, I think it's really marginalising a particular group but doesn't deserve to be marginalised, and that's lesbian, gay and bisexual, transgender people.
Yeah, that was my next question actually, was do you feel that the Asian community is more tolerant towards homosexuals, or do you think it's not changing at all, or do you think it's worse than what it was before?
I would say that things are getting better at a fairly slow pace, and there are various things that have contributed to this. Firstly, we see that with subsequent generations of South Asians, so, you know, we have a second and a third, and in some cases even a fourth generation of South Asians, we have, let's say, new ideas emerging, and people that have, of course, been, who were brought up in this country, creating that dialogue on the one hand. But I would say what's very important is that awareness is created. And we've seen growing awareness of these issues through things as mundane as the EastEnders storyline about Saeed Masood, for instance.
Yes.
So before that, for instance, I would say that very few people even acknowledged the existence of homosexuality within the South Asian community. It was seen perhaps as something which white British people do and not South Asians. But now, after that storyline, I think that raised some fundamental questions, and people were becoming more aware of the existence of this, and they were also able to see the character for who the character was, i.e. in a positive light. So I think it increased understanding to some degree. But as I say, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. It's still not an ideal situation. We still haven't... I hear many stories of discrimination and very low psychological well-being among people.
I mean, there has been a couple of breakthroughs. You know, there was a couple of individuals who recently got married from, they were originally from Pakistan, from Lahore. They came here to study, and they recently had a civil ceremony. It was two, you know, Pakistani women who were in love and they wanted to get married, and, you know, that, some would say that is progress. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think this is a progress on a social and legal level, but we mustn't, I think, be naive here. We also have to acknowledge the surrounding factors. So what would be parents' and family members' reactions to this? Would they lose all contact with their family members? So we mustn't assume that just because individuals are able to get married or to enter into a civil partnership, that this means that there won't be discrimination or marginalisation, because it is, what I found in my research consistently is that ethnic identity is very important. Often people are very proud of their ethnic background. They're very proud and they're very happy to be a member of an ethnicity. They're also very proud of their religious background. But when you are marginalised by these two groups, i.e. your religious group and your ethnic group, this is also not very good for psychological well-being. So the ideal situation would be to be able to acknowledge your sexual identity, i.e. being a lesbian, being gay, being bisexual or whatever, and being able to continue to be a member of your ethnic and religious groups. And so I'm not sure whether these individuals who entered into a civil partnership were afforded that opportunity.
I mean, it was, I'm just reading the names now, it was Rehana Kausar and Sabaya Kumar, who they did have to apply for a political asylum because they were afraid of what would happen, you know, if, you know, they ever went to Pakistan, or, you know, what would happen to them here. But I believe it was a civil ceremony, and a relative of theirs, from what I've read in the papers, mentioned that you cannot get married within the religious ceremony because no priest would say that it's okay for them to get married, which is rather sad, actually.
Yes. Now, I think there is a very fine line between advocating diversity and acceptance, which is what I do. I believe, I very much value diversity of all kinds, ethnic, religious, sexual diversity, and I think that it's important to value that. But I also think that we shouldn't limit the rights of particular religious institutions. Now, some religious institutions are against the idea of performing same-sex marriages or unions, and I think that it's perhaps within their rights to do so, or at least there is a debate that needs to be had. We can't, I think, prescribe something and say, well, you must do this, and I'm not in a position to do that. But yes, I can understand that some people would indeed want their religious group to acknowledge their sexuality and to acknowledge their same-sex union, and it would very much sadden them if this were not the case.
We will be discussing this further with Gurnam Singh, but we're going to take a short break. See you on the other side.
She's just a child, only 19 months old, in agony. a terrified little girl. A girl who knows nothing but pain. It's caused by malnutrition. All Ferdowsi knows is that it's agony. All Ferdowsi wants is someone to help. Please, will you help? Show her that you care. Your support can bring food to a child like Ferdowsi. You can help right now by calling 0800 316 7725 and giving £2 a month. We're doing all we can to end the outrage of children living without food. But the reality is that a sick and hungry child needs you right now, simply to stay alive. Save the Children know what it takes to save Ferdowsi, but we can only save children because someone cares enough to pick up the phone and make a difference. Please, will you help save a child's life today? With as little as £2, you can save a life with high-energy food. You can provide the medicine to keep a child healthy. You can bring hope. No child should be born to suffer this way. Please show these children that you care by calling 0800 316 7725 or visit savethechildren.org.uk and give your £2 a month today.
Hey, what's up everybody, I'm Jazz Dami. Catch you performing next week on the 12th of October at the Birmingham NIA for the Brit Asia Awards. It's going to be an amazing night, so make sure you guys are there.
The Brit Asia Music Awards 2013. Tickets have been released. Get yours now to avoid disappointment. For further information, call 07977902059. Log on to theticketfactory.com or chilitickets.com.
Are you a business who had an interest rate swap loan? Was your business missold interest rate swaps or other similar products? We can help you recover thousands of pounds. Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC and Royal Bank of Scotland systematically missold complicated interest hedging products to thousands of small business customers. The FSA concluded that swaps were missold and has ordered the banks to pay appropriate compensation. To find out more, call JIC Swap Claims now or go online at swapclaim.tv.
My housemate at uni was bisexual. A couple of years lived with him. He was cool. I knew a couple of people here and there, mainly from university, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah. Several people.
Yeah, I do. I have a few family members and loads of friends.
Yes, I know a lot of people who are homosexual, and I don't have any problems with them being homosexual or not being homosexual. As I said, it's a choice of people want to live a life, and everybody should be able to live whatever life they want to live.
No, yeah, I know too many people, you know. When I go into work, you know, I see too many people.
Hello, welcome after the break. My name is Jyoti Sindar and you're watching Rendezvous. Today we are discussing homosexuality within the Asian community. Now I have on the phone Dr Gurnam Singh Ji. Sat Sri Akal, Dr Gurnam Singh Ji.
Anji, Sat Sri Akal Ji.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Now, as discussed, we are currently discussing views on homosexuality and wanted to know what it is on a religious perspective. I mean, in your opinion, in your views, do you think homosexuality is acceptable within the Asian society?
Yeah, I mean, the issue is not quite that black and white, because as you can understand, the whole kind of question of homosexuality or societal acceptance of that is something that's kind of, even in the West, has evolved over time. And so I think you need to separate two different issues. Mm-hmm. One is the issue of what you might say is homophobia, and then the other issue is around homosexuality or gay sexuality. Yeah, and we need to address those two issues separately. In terms of hatred and homophobia towards people who might, as it were, not follow the normal path, if you know what I mean by that, you know, man and a woman. Certainly within the Sikh community or Sikh religion, there is absolutely no acceptance that we can have hatred. In fact, in Gurbani it says in many places around several times you've that. Even every day we do Ardas, our prayer, and we talk about Sarbat Dapala.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the concept of Sarbat Dapala, I don't know if you know, but there's actually a Sikh gay and lesbian organisation in the UK. And they actually have a website, and it's called Sarbat.net. So they take that very concept of Sarbat, or of all humanity.
Wow.
Okay. So they certainly make powerful arguments that within the Sikh faith there is no hatred or no objections towards people practicing in a different way. That said, if you look at the institutions and the Akal Takht, they have put out one or two very clear injunctions that in terms of the Anandakarj, or the marriage, the concept of marriage in Sikhi,
yes,
that is between a man and a woman, yeah? So it is a minefield. It's quite complicated. And often we don't really discuss this enough because of the kind of emotions that behind that and the fears that are behind that. And a lot of those fears are really to do with generally the way in which gay and lesbian people have been portrayed in the media historically, yeah? So it is a difficult terrain to tread on.
Okay, and in terms of sort of, obviously it's a mixture of religious and cultural perspectives. I mean, you know, you personally, you have a great understanding of the Guru Granth Sahib and what's said in Sikhi, and, you know, we do not practice hatred, etc. Yet these individuals are unable to get married in a Gurdwara. Do you think that's acceptable? Do you think that they should be condemned just because they are... You know, it doesn't say somewhere in written scriptures that this should be allowed?
Again, I don't want to... you might think I'm sitting on the fence, but it is not a clear-cut issue. I think everybody interprets religion through culture, yeah? Through the prevailing kind of social norms. And they change. So just in the way in which, you know, the role of women is changing, and us, we're kind of, as it were, becoming part of what you might see as a global human rights culture, then things will change. Now, that said, the Anandakar ceremony is very clear that the Anandakar ceremony is a religious process. It's a religious, if you like, it's a ritual that is clearly defined. Okay, so I think that if, say, a gay couple who got married legally, and now you can get married legally, wanted to go for a blessing in the Gurdwara, I don't think there's any objection to that, yeah.
Okay. And do you think within the Punjabi, culturally, within Punjabi society, that it is acceptable to be homosexual?
Well, again, it's changing. I mean, you'd be surprised at how quickly attitudes are changing with the generations, yeah? I mean, you know yourself that the kind of generation, the younger generation in today's society is much more comfortable with diversity in many ways, yeah? And then that inevitably does get reflected amongst the younger Sikhs. But if you talk the older generation, then they still harbour what you might call the kind of feudal attitudes from which they kind of they grew up in. So again, it's not one voice. I think you have generational differences.
Yeah.
And then I think you have differences amongst Sikhs in terms of whether they are professionals and whether they are non-professionals. Because as professionals, you're often working in organisations that have laws and policies, particularly around equality. So you inevitably change your view. So again, I think it's an interesting time, and I think there are conflicts there. I mean, the other thing is, I think that gay and lesbian Sikhs are now becoming more assertive in coming out, yeah? And I think that's really important. I know, for example, that the London Gay Pride March that they have each year, that now we do have the gay and lesbian Sikhs represented there. So I think that you will find in a short period, things will change dramatically.
Yeah, although some people, you know, taking the sort of negative view would say that if you have, you know, gay, lesbian individuals, I mean, you know, they will not procreate, they will not have children, and you know, they will take it to the extreme and ask, okay, well, what will happen to the world? I mean, what do you say to that type of statement or those type of individuals?
Well, I mean, that's often the argument that's being made. The argument that's made is that, you know, it's unnatural. That's the argument, yeah? Actually, there's quite a lot of research, and again, people can look this up, that sexuality itself isn't quite black and white, and you will find people on a spectrum, yeah? And we know, for example, in India, the Hijras, the community that was, who had sex change operations and things like that. So that's the first, if you took in the nature or science, then you actually discover a spectrum of sexualities, and you find that in the animal kingdom as well. That said, you know, we're not talking really about biology. We're talking about morality. We're talking about faith. And, you know, people have their faith, and if they believe their faith says that, you know, gay, lesbian sexuality is not right, then it's very difficult to shift that and challenge that. And maybe one should try to be tolerant and try to live with different viewpoints. But the key thing is not to have hatred and not to commit violence, which does happen in a lot of countries. And thankfully not in the UK, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr Gurnam Singh Ji, for joining us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Some strong opinions there,
yes,
and very relaxed and mixed. I mean, what is your view? You know, I asked Dr Gurnam Singh Ji earlier about individuals who will turn around and say, okay, you know, there's gays, there's lesbians, what about the children, what's going to happen? I mean, what are your views on that?
Well, I must say I agree with the majority of what Dr Singh has said. I think it's a very refreshing view that he's provided.